For those of you who don't know, my name is Matt Tudor, and I am the Deputy Superintendent for the school district. We're thrilled to have you guys here tonight, and we're also excited for the people who are streaming online with us either now or in the future. I have a guest who I'm going to introduce here in just one second. But in the fall of 2024, the district contracted with SHP, a local design firm, to start our journey of master facilities planning. We've recently had some community advisory team meetings to help guide our process, and now we're opening up to the community forum for some additional feedback. So we're excited that your voice will be heard as we start to make decisions around this process. I'm going to be back to speak about some information with the district, but I'm excited to turn it over to the Vice President of SHP Design Firm. This is Charlie Janigan, who's going to help guide us tonight. So welcome, Charlie.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tudor. Again, my name is Charlie Janigan. I'm an architect. Back in March, I hit 25 years with SHP. So today we're going to go through a couple of things, overview of master planning, what's been done to date. As Mr. Tudor mentioned, we started kind of things in the fall, really kicked things off in January. We're going to look at the facilities that Springboro has, talk about how we narrowed scenarios down to a couple of options, and then ultimately we're going to leave with a survey. The survey will also be live for those online and viewing this at a later point. We're going to keep it up for about 7 days, so we're also going to be pushing it out through other district media methodologies. At the end, after the survey, I will do questions. Because we are streaming this, and I have the microphone, we'd like you to write your questions down on note cards. So raise your hand, we can give you note cards. I've got some pens. Mr. Gilbert also has some in the back that we can distribute for questions. For the sake of time, we'll do that after the survey. Sound good? All right. So master planning is something that our firm does all throughout Ohio, actually in other states. We find when we master plan a school building, and it checks three buckets. It's educationally strong, it's financially responsible, and it's community development supported. So we have been going through a process with a group called our Community Advisory Team, or CAT team, here at Springboro, and they've been helping guide us on what we've done to date. Ultimately, this is going to go to the information we're gathering through this process is going to go to the Board of Education, where they ultimately make the final decision. This is a schedule of the timeline. As mentioned, we started things in January of just data gathering and talking with the administration. We formulated the CAT team, and we met a couple of times through February, March, and April, where we've been able to talk about various scenarios and land where we are today. If the district considers to continue moving forward, some things can happen over the summer and ultimately go to voters in the November of 25 election. And that would be the ultimate question or request is if the voters want to support the plan. The plan that is being promoted is basically the cost of it for tax purposes is considered 2.8 mils. That's a factor of how taxes are calculated. And it would be a renewal. And so it is not an increase of taxes. There are taxes that are falling off here from previous millage requests from the district from the late 90s and 2000s. The dollar amounts you can see are on the screen for just using $100,000 home. It's about $8 a month right now in taxes. And that is currently being paid by folks here. Multiplying the $8 by 3 for a $300,000 home, it comes to about $24 a month in taxes, and that is currently being paid by taxpayers. This is a graphic showing how that's functioning. So you can see in red that's been in place for many years. The district has been using some creative strategies to renew things. So in 2020. The district was able to reduce their payments, but then stabilize and use 1.3 mils for PI, for permanent improvement type things. We are now at that same point where a 1 mil drop will happen in the near future, and then a 1.8 mil drop will happen in about 7 or 8 years. And the monies that we're talking would be used for the future bond issue, if that would be considered. So one of the first things we did with the community advisory group is talk about values, of the things that are important living here in Springboro. I'm not going to go through all 12 of these, but later on in our survey, you'll have the option to rate your priorities. We're kind of looking for our top 3. We've seen some themes come out, but these are all very strong values of what the community wants to see out of Springboro Schools. So later in the survey, you'll have a chance to rate your top 3. Looking at the district, this is a map of the boundaries of the district. It's a good-sized district, made up of actually 4 communities. So you've got Springboro in yellow, we've got Franklin Township, this little wedge of purple, there's a little Turtle Creek Township, and then the bulk of it is actually Clear Creek Township. Within this, you can also see the locations of the buildings. So you've got kind of the main campus with the high school, junior high, and Dennis. Right up the road, we've got Clear Creek and SI, and then 5 Points is kind of on the northeast portion of the district. So that's just looking at the spread of how buildings are laid out. Looking a little deeper, this shows a chart of the buildings and the grade divisions. Also take note of the years they've been built. So there are portions of this school district that has buildings from 1929, 1950, 1960. Clear Creek is 1968. And then there was a large amount done in the late 90s and 2000s. You're in some of the spaces here, obviously, today. You can also see the enrollment and the capacities, and then the areas of the buildings. The one thing to point out, and we've used this graphic here, is to show the timeline. Some of these buildings do become complicated. They're complicated to run. They become somewhat of using this analogy of a car, where you start adding on and modifying. A lot of folks don't know that it's hard to get parts for a car in 1920. It's hard to get parts for a building that still has pieces from 1920. The district has to frequently use some creative methodologies like eBay to buy materials. If a portion of a boiler or a fire alarm breaks, it's not really available off the shelf. So this is an opportunity to look at some of the older buildings and think about how we can advance them into the future. Wakefield is another facility that, lack of better terms, that the district owns. For those who don't know, a lot of varsity field, it's used as a varsity field. So high school students travel there. That's a little complicated on safety. They're just driving down there. Parking is tricky. The locker rooms and restrooms are right outside, so it's not really congruent for kind of modern day play and competition. Press box is a little outdated, and so there's an investment needs to be put into that. Or the district is saying, hey, if we're going to do that, let's do it on our campus. So you'll see a potential layout here shortly. Mr. Tudor's going to come up and address enrollment.
Thank you, Charlie. All right. We hear very frequently about how our school is busting at the seams. I'm sure when you drive through the community, you do and have seen housing neighborhood projects go up all over the city of Springboro and Clear Creek Township. So we're here to talk about factual information about what our enrollment actually is from the metrics that we keep internally. This is our current enrollment. A couple things you'll notice, we are about 6,100 students that we serve. Interesting, if you look a little bit deeper into this, our larger classes are in grades 6 and above. So the younger classes are a little bit smaller. And that's kind of kept our enrollment steady. When we look at why, let me go out of order, Charlie, sorry. When we look back a little bit, this graph represents the percent change of enrollment in Warren County since 2014. So we are right here. We've seen about a 3% raise in our enrollment since 2014. So I asked the residents here to think back from 2014, how many neighborhoods did you see go up? Because we really haven't seen it in our classrooms to the extent that you feel like you should. If I take a little bit closer look, this looks at from 2021, and we're at a 1.6% increase, so even more of a modest student increase, which doesn't make sense to me, right? Because again, we see all these housing developments go up, and we feel like we should have a bunch of students coming out of it, and that just has not been our reality. All right, so I'm going to jump back and why. When we pull census data, it starts to make a little bit of sense to us. The top one shows the total population. You can see we've got more residents in Springboro than we did in 2010. The average house size is slightly going down, and the number of households is going up. So all that's in line to more kids, right? Well, that's not what we're seeing, actually. And if you look a little bit deeper, it starts to explain why. Again, more households with children. But our median age is going up from 2010 to 2022, jumps from 37 to 40. And then we start to see a decline in the students that we serve. Residents age 0, I guess 1 to 19, we're seeing about a 3% drop. 20 to 44, again, a little bit of a drop. Our 45 to 64 is pretty stagnant, and then our 65 and older, you see it almost doubles. So we are getting more experienced as a community. And then I think these last two lines on here are pretty telling to me. That when you look at our taxpayers who are receiving retirement income or Social Security, we've seen about a third increase in that. So while people are coming and to Springboro and building new houses, the reality for us is the people who have enjoyed Springboro Schools, their kids have gone through, they're not moving out. So for every new house that goes up that brings kids, we are likely to have a house that they've been established, they've been here, kids have graduated, they've moved on, and the parents haven't left. We've got a low tax rate, and our partners at the City of Springboro are fantastic with how they treat Springboro life. I mean, with what they've done at Rec Station and some of the plans they have to come, why would you move up to Springboro? With that said, our partners at the city, I'm going to describe a little bit about the land swap, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Some of you may have heard about this land swap. Big Daily News has picked it up since this summer. But recently, we came to an agreement with the City of Springboro that lays two paths for this land swap. If the voters approve in November this bond that we're discussing tonight, the City of Springboro would give us 20 acres off the Easton property. We would give them the property and building for Clear Creek Elementary, and then we would give them the vacant Jonathan Wright property. So it's about 20 acres for 20 acres. Benefit for the school is we're able to build while we continue to operate. Benefit for the city, obviously. You know, they get some traffic out of downtown, and we're able to further develop some of the areas that they've been working on as well. If it doesn't pass, the city's going to give us technology considerations, and in turn, they still would get Jonathan Wright. So we did work that out with them, and we're excited about the opportunity for this community regardless. So Charlie's going to jump back in and talk a little bit more about the cat teamwork.
Right, thank you very much. My wife's birthday is tomorrow, so I'm going to say congratulations, you're more experienced. So. I appreciate that definition. All right, so Easton Farm, for those that don't know, this is looking at the existing conditions. The city has recently acquired it, and they are working to potentially develop it for multi-use. This was a plat, this is the same boundary of the farm, and 741, and we've taken about 20 acres, and we did something called a test fit. And what it is can we fit the building on here? We just used 5 Points in Dennis because the district is familiar with that as an example. It's probably not what would be built there if a building was built, but it fits a school building. It also fits the other amenities as far as drop-off, parking, fields, etc. So during this journey, we wanted to see if a building could fit, and it is suitable. I know the district has the city has other desires for other kind of housing and commercial developments in the front. Another test fit that we did through the discussions is could 5 Points in Dennis be converted to a PK3? And if that were to happen, they would require additions. And so in purple, you can see right here is a PK addition, and then within the building here, these classrooms would be renovated to kindergarten. You could have first grade here, and then the second floor, you could have second grade and third grade. So the answer from this exploration is, could those buildings be converted? They could with a small addition, and we factored that into the cost of the analysis. Looking at the high school campus, you heard me mention the challenges of the Wade Field. Here is where we are sitting, and there is a good tract of land to the south of us. And so we explored that little kind of polygon shape of fitting in a potential multi-use stadium. So this could be for lacrosse, it could be for soccer, it could be turf, so we give the community another turf field. But then there would be a couple other amenities as far as parking for visitors, a small locker room concession, and some stands. So that could function as its own operating field, stadium within the campus, so students would be traveling. So that's kind of some factual information. And then what we did with the CAT team is we created a variety of scenarios, master plan scenarios. We actually came up with 6. Before I show those, let me show the way we've looked at these. This is a chart with a bunch of verticals showing grades. So you see preschool through 12th grade, and then in the first box you can see Clear Creek Elementary houses kids P through 1. And then from there they split and they go to grades 2 through 5 at 5 points in Dennis. And then from there they come back to SI. And then there's another transition to the junior high and then finally to the high school. So this is the current configuration of the district. I think the numbers that were shown before was the same thing, 61, 21. So that's the student enrollment here. We did explore 6 options, but through our journey we've narrowed it down to 2, and we'll zoom into the 2 that are standing. For a variety of reasons, safety, cost, too much square footage, too many transitions, low support from the CAT, we eliminated 1, 2, 5, and 6. So what we have here is we have scenarios 3 and scenarios 4. So here's scenario 3. Scenario 3 is to build a new PK2. So it would be grades preschool through 2nd grade. And then 5 points in Dennis would go from a 2 through 5 to a 3 through 6. So SI would also be not used as an education facility. The district would maintain it. So it might be used for other community activities. The gymnasium would stay. The district's not trading that, or there's no other considerations other than keeping it. From there, the junior high and high school would remain the same. So this is what we call PK2. The other thing you might notice on here is it says the 2020 plan. There was a master plan explored in 2020. It culminated in early March of 2020, and this is the plan they landed on. But since then, it didn't move forward, obviously, for the world that got flipped upside down, so don't care to go back there. So this is scenario 4. This is a plan where the new building would be a 4 through 6. So you can see right there, just looking at the colors, here's your new here, here's your new here. We would then repurpose 5 points in Dennis to become PK3s, so that test fit that we showed that would work. And then the junior high would be a 7-8, and then the high school would be 9-12. And again, in this scenario, 6th grade moves into a building and not be a singular grade like it is today. So this is known as scenario 4, a new 4 through 6 with 2 additions. So with that, the costs are really fairly similar within this millage that I presented to maintain the same amount of taxes that everyone pays. And with the approval of voters, it would generate $115 million of new money for the school district. So in scenario 3, the PK2 is about $66 million. And the 4 through 6, the PK additions is about $71 million. So it's about $5 million more. It's really because you're doing those additions. We have some costs in here for a stadium. We also have some costs in here for expanding the junior high with science rooms and also cafeteria. In 2020, that was identified as a need, so we've got that in there. And then lastly, as you can see, a line called upgrades to others. So it gives the district to the opportunity to provide upgrades throughout all the other buildings. This is a relatively newer concept that we determined here with the CAT team, and we don't have the exact scope, but the bottom line with these is they both are at $115 million total. The upgrades to others could be safety and security features. There's a variety of things that could be done, secured vestibules, cameras, coatings on glass, consistent locking mechanisms throughout. There's a lot of things that can be done through all buildings. HVAC improvements, identifying some heavier costs, chillers or boilers, and kind of lived its life. We're looking at controls, HVAC controls, could there be a more energy efficient way of providing air? Furniture is something that could always be addressed. It gets a lot of wear and tear from students, and identifying them throughout the district, areas where it needs to be replaced. Technology is obvious. This could be everything from new projectors and screens to touch screens and other amenities to improve the educational quality. Performing arts and athletic improvements, again, those will be looked at if the voters continue to nod their head and say this is the path we want to go on, and those things would be identified and dollars would be addressed. Traffic improvements, we know that when we've talked with the district, a lot of folks talk about, there's pick up and drop off is long and slow. What can we do to bring traffic engineers on to explore improving some of those challenges? STEM opportunities, that's growing and increasing by the year. We know that Warren County Career Center has made it clear that they're not going to be going back to the voters to do their program. So now it's falling on the Warren County districts to say, hey, maybe we can address some things and put some more labs in and more amenities here on this campus. It would also go, STEM opportunities would also go to the younger grades too. Last is keep SIs in the district support space. Again, if the plan moves forward, sixth grade were to be abandoned and move into a bigger building, SI would remain. And then the last one is a contingency. As we know, it's a little volatile world right now with some costs, gas, steel, whatever you're buying, and so we would recommend having a above and beyond contingency for just protection, and so we know that we can hit the budgets that have been established. So the last thing I want to address, and we're going to be getting to the survey, so we're right on time, is busing. We know that busing is a critical thing here. This is a big district, there's a lot of miles that need to be covered. What you're seeing right here is the current busing configuration. So there's a tier 1 that addresses grades 6 through 12. There's a tier 2 that is split. That's why the little wedge is there. And it goes, half the buses go to Dennis, half go to 5 Points. And then there's a tier 3, and the tier 3 addresses Clear Creek. And that's the most efficient way to move kids to the school buildings and move them back home on a day-to-day basis. When you look at these two scenarios, it might potentially have to change. And really what I want to hone in on is the split. This is the tier 2 time, and the district has looked, and through this configuration, if we were to go through our 4th or 6th, the split would have to happen on tier 2 on these grades. So this was the clearest way I could put it together. So if we were to go with a new PK2, the busing would basically stay the same as it is today. And if we were to move to a 4th or 6th, instead of doing tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, it would be tier 1, and then the younger kids in tier 2, and then the middle grades in tier 3. And I hope that makes sense because the spread of the bus is kind of going to the extreme ends of the district because there's 2 buildings. So that's the most efficient way, and we've looked at that with the Director of Transportation here at Springboro. So with that, if you have questions, we'd like to hand out some note cards. Raise your hand and we'll get you some note cards. Yeah, there's some in the back. So Matt and Mr. Gilbert are going to hand some out. Raise your hand, and if you guys could take this survey, it's going to take about 4 minutes. Okay, so thank you guys for taking the survey. Just for your knowledge, there's about 50 of us here today. We've got about 80 people online, so we really appreciate the great turnout. So I've got a variety of questions in no particular order. I'm going to be answering them. I tried to batch a couple of them. This first one is, so 4 through 6 would be late busing, and PK3 will get home before older kids. And the answer to that is yes. For that configuration with the busing, that would be the scenario. Next question is, could fencing around the perimeter be added for safety plans? And as I mentioned with the other potential miscellaneous projects, those types of things could be addressed. If we have a particular school that has boundary issues and kids who frequently want to leave, we've added fencing, obviously, as a safety feature. And most new buildings are also built with that type of amenity today. With any of the plans put in place, do you assure that SI will not be destroyed? And as to mention, or to reiterate, there are no plans for demolishing SI. And that's never been on the table. It's always been the district maintaining that building and utilizing it as really flex space, and also allowing the community to use it for the gymnasium and community use. So it's never been, I've never had an option to demolish and abandon SI as a building. This question, I'm sorry I wasn't clear. This is, are we considering using Dennis and 5 Points plans for the new building? And the answer is no. It was used as an example building, as a test. This building was opened in 2006, and it's the appropriate same size, but that would probably not be the configuration because that was designed from about 20 years ago. So we would go through a whole community design process, formulate teams with staff, and really design a building for that grade level, whichever the district decides with. It's at the elementary level on 4 through 6, we would design to that appropriate age group. If SI is difficult to maintain, why keep it? And I believe from my impression is that there's a lot of sentimental value to that building. I know the building's been around there for a while, and a lot of people have gone through that building, and when we talked about abandoning it, the CAT team was like, we're not doing that. It's too much of an asset to this community. So they would basically keep it at a low heat if no one's using it, and make sure that it doesn't freeze over or whatever. But I think the plan potentially the district could use it as a flex space for PD or other administrative needs, where there are people in there on a regular basis. Was never considered to make Dennis and 5 Points 3, 4, 5 buildings, leave 6th grade at SI for now, and build a new PK 1 through 2 at Easton. This allows for growth in the future. We did have a plan that looked at that, but it proved to be a little more expensive and had too much square footage. So when we looked at that, there was too much square footage that the district was developing, and it would seem that it was very costly. And the other thing is transitions. There's been a lot of studies on when a child goes to a new building, there's a learning curve. There's a learning curve of the getting around, the drop off, the pickup, staff, where the gymnasium is, where the bathroom is. And so when kids go to a building for 1 year as SI, there's some challenges there, and they got to redo it again the next year when they go to 7th grade. So the stats say that the less transitions, the better academically prepared kids can be. All right. Has there been any discussion with the city about doing a traffic study with the proposed plans and possible improvements to 741? The answer is yes, there's been discussions. In fact, we're having a meeting with the city in May with a civil engineer that works for me, who specializes in school design, and the city's engineer. And we're talking about the scenarios. And with traffic studies, you guys see it when you drive on the road, there's a little black thing, rubber thing, you drive over it. They put up cameras now, so they film you with phone poles, and then they simulate all of it. They collect all the data, they put it in the computer. There's a lot of simulation, it's expensive. And so I think we can look at it at a high level, but until there's a firm decision and a firm, yes, there's a school building going here, that's when the traffic analysis will really happen. The other thing to point out is that really since COVID, traffic by parents with bringing their kids to school has increased. And so a lot of the school buildings that we design today have amenities or modifications to accommodate the huge car load that they see for pickup and drop off. And we, as a rule of thumb, there's three things we do. You separate parents coming in to drop off, pick up. You separate buses coming in because they're at a higher level and you have different sidelines, and you separate staff. At high school, you throw in the student factor. So we try to implement best practices. If you really look at SI and Clear Creek, those buildings were built in a time where a lot of kids were riding their bikes or walking to school. There weren't any parents in 1968 driving their kids to school. You went on the bus or you went on with your body. So in today's world, we have to do a lot of new things to acclimate the way kids get to and from school. I got two questions, and then I'm going to hand to Mr. Tudor to answer his two, and we'll wrap it up. What would parking at Easton location be like? This is already a struggle at 5 points. So that was tied to the previous question. 5 points has been there for 21 years, and we would look at how people come today and the times they come and try to design a building to get as much traffic off the roads and onto the school sites where people tend to drive a little slower and things are safer. The district is behind on all-day kindergarten. Does the pre-K3 building account for room for all-day K? And the answer is yes. Both of these scenarios have all-day K built into them, so it has the square footage. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Tudor to answer two kind of more district pertinent questions, and we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, two questions. What is 5-year projected enrollments? Previously, the district had a contract with an organization that provided enrollment projections for us. And what we did was we took the earlier ones and overlaid them with the actual enrollment. And they were so far off that we don't use that firm anymore. So the process that we use, one of the big ones is we look at retention ratios. And what that does is it says how many kindergartners are there and how many of them stay for first grade. So what we know is from kindergarten to first grade, we see a 20% increase in our enrollment, which based on that last question from Charlie makes total sense, right? Some parents want all-day kindergarten, so they go elsewhere since we don't offer it, and then they move their children in for first grade. So we are continually monitoring that to make sure that we're in line with where we are, and we look at enrollment numbers each month to make sure that there's not a blip or something that we miss. If we do secure funding for this, it'd be my desire to probably work with a different company with an actual target in mind. One thing Charlie didn't mention is if the community does support this, it's likely that we would open the door to the new school in August of 2029. So we certainly would have time to secure a firm, look at that, and make sure that what we're seeing matches with the projections. I think here it just gets so difficult to project enrollment because the expectation a lot of times is you come here for the schools, you have a great experience, your kids move on to college and career, and you downsize to a home. That's not what's happening here today. It makes sense why it's not happening. So that just throws a wrench in enrollment projections because they want to look at new builds and apply that in a way that isn't our reality. The other question, thanks Charlie for this one, what does research say about school start times relative to age? Is this something being considered with these scenarios? It's my third year in the district, and multiple times already we've looked at the idea of can high school start later? And just like there was a question asked about who's getting home first when, transportation really is our driver behind that. So in order for us to have the high school start later, I don't know that we have the ability to do that from an operational standpoint with our routing and drivers and buses based on the numbers of them and how that works. So it's certainly something we're aware of. Like Charlie said, we are going to meet with Chris and his team and look at the traffic study. These start times are the start times there are now, and they may be the start times that they are when new schools open, but we are going to take a little deeper dive in with the city or the partnership with their expertise to see are there other investments that can be made. So we're still exploring that, but I only expect it to stay the same unless we learn something new. So we'll go down that path. Okay?
All right, we'll wrap it up.
All right, well, that's it. It's a beautiful day outside, and we talked about having you guys for an hour, and we're wrapping up a little bit early. What I know is that we have a very dedicated and invested community. Many of you who are parents here probably moved here for the school district. My ask for you, whether you're online or here in person, is we really need to hear your voice. You guys are going to be the ones that really help drive our decision, and without your voice, it's going to be more difficult for us to make decisions. So we're going to send a stream out to those of you who are online, as well as a link to the survey, and please fill it out and help us guide this process. And we'll be back in touch with more information soon. Thanks for coming. Have a great night.